This is the story of two teenagers, one from the Fire Nation and one from the Southern Water Tribe. One is introduced as the most moral character in the entire series. The other does everything he can to capture the Avatar. Both have lost their mothers, and both are trying to deal with the pain in their past, though they go about it in quite different ways. One has what is commonly regarded as the best redemption arc in modern television history. The other has far more of a dark side than is apparent at first. They first directly interact in episode 109, The Waterbending Scroll, in which Zuko taunts her with her mother's necklace, which he has stolen. From there, the relationship between them evolves and changes. They grow closer together, then further apart again. And finally, they're as close as any two characters in this entire show. They are the two most compelling characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the parallels between them are numerous. By the end of the series, they may not be romantically involved, but the bond between them is nonetheless very strong. How did they get there? How did that happen? This is Avatar Explained, Zuko and Katara edition. When I say that these two understand each other as well as, or even better than, any other two characters in this show, I want to be clear what I mean by that. I'm not saying they're the only two characters in Avatar who have suffered grief and pain. The show is set against the backdrop of a century-long war. Everyone has been affected to some extent. Katara may have lost her mother, but Kaya was Sokka's mother too. Yet he's not affected nearly as much as she is. And in terms of losing the most people, both Zuko and Katara have lost far less than Aang, who has to live with the knowledge that he's the last living member of his civilization. But of course, that's a stupid way to think about grief. It's not an objective thing that we can gain insight on by running the numbers. It's subjective and personal. We all process it differently. Aang is able to mostly move beyond the pain he has suffered, especially after Season 1. That is not to say he forgets about what happened, or that he doesn't care, but he doesn't dwell on it. Neither does Sokka, who carries himself with charm and sarcasm. Zuko and Katara, however, take everything extremely seriously, including what happened to them. I don't want to say they allow it to define them. They don't. When they share an intimate moment in prison near the end of Season 2, Zuko speaks openly and earnestly about moving beyond the image he once believed was destined to define him. But they also cannot escape what happened. They have to confront it. Zuko has to confront his father to truly move beyond the confused person he has been. Katara has to confront her mother's murderer in order to move past the darkness within herself. Thus, the similarities between the two are less in what they have been through and more in how they react to it. That they come off as the two most mature people in Team Avatar has something to do with their age and physical appearance, but it also has a lot to do with how they can't shrug everything off. Once they get to know each other, they realize how similar they are and how they see the world. There are differences, of course. Katara tries to see the best in everyone, even being the first person to trust Zuko. This contrasts with Zuko, who, having grown up in an abusive household, has a hard time trusting anyone. But Katara's overall psyche and worldview are more like those of Zuko than those of her brother, Aang, or Toph. They can talk easily to each other, but not until Katara lets her guard down regarding Zuko. For almost 2 full seasons, she views him as the face of the Fire Nation. Whenever she thinks about the terrible regime that wreaked havoc on her village and took her mother from her, she thinks of Zuko. She says terrible things to him when he is first thrown in prison with her in Ba Sing Se, and he doesn't try to argue against her, except to say she's wrong when she says spreading violence is in his blood. Though that's as much a case of him thinking about his uncle as it is a case of him thinking about himself. He's struck with guilt, remembering all the horrible actions he has taken in the past that he is justified by saying he is doing what is necessary to redeem himself and reclaim his honor. Having seen Zuko grow and change throughout Season 2, it can be jarring to listen to Katara talk about him in the broadest, most simplistic terms. She believes at first that he's been thrown in prison with her as a trick to help capture Aang. As Zuko sits, his back turned to Katara, she stands and rants, talking about how evil he is for trying to capture the Avatar, the last hope for the world. It makes perfect sense that she says what she says, and she has reason to be angry, but at the same time, the show leads us to identify more with Zuko in this confrontation. We know everything Zuko has been through, while Katara does not. We're left yearning for the conversation to take a turn for the positive. For excruciating seconds that feel as long as hours, it doesn't look like this is going to happen. Not ever. Katara reveals that for all her talk about Zuko trying to capture Aang, her real problem with him is much more personal. But then Zuko drops a revelation. The Fire Nation took his mother from him. When he spills out his entire backstory to her, she's left in shock. She realizes that she did not understand him at all. She realizes her idea of him as a simplistic, one-dimensional villain was completely and utterly wrong. As she puts it in episode 312, The Western Air Temple, he starts talking like he's an actual person with feelings. There are two sides of Katara. There's the caring, strong, incredibly empathetic side that's in control of her 90% of the time. Then there's the furious, morally ambiguous, vindictive, revenge-hungry side of her that wants to punish everyone who has betrayed her. Watching her switch from her dark side to her light side almost instantly is a marvel to behold, truly. It's easy to criticize her for acting like she does towards Zuko, but imagine if you had only watched the first 11 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you had had no interaction whatsoever with the Avatar fandom. You would not have seen the storm, and you certainly would not have seen Zuko alone. You would just believe he's an angry, desperate, miserable jerk. You'd believe he's just a one-dimensional villain. That's where Katara is right now. As if that was not bad enough, she's not just a viewer disgusted by the actions she has seen him take. She is someone who has been placed in danger by those actions. In fact, what is remarkable is how readily she is willing to accept him. Even after everything he has done, she is willing to believe he can change for the better. Part of that is just Katara's nature, but part of it is how she senses the similarities between them. Zuko is not just sullen and frustrated. He's a person who has suffered loss and processed that loss in much the same way she herself has. This is such a sweet and powerful and intimate moment that it makes his betrayal at the end of the episode all the more cutting. You can tell she's just barely holding back tears as she tells him that she thought he had changed. It would have been easy for Katara going forward to say that he was trying to trick her and that he was just trying to take advantage of her. But she doesn't say this because she knows it's not true. No, she does not have Toph's lie detection skills, but she knows the connection they formed was real. However, she also knows he chose Azula and false promises of honor instead of her. This complicated, tangled web of emotions does not resolve itself quickly or easily, as she admits herself in episode 312. There's warmth and sympathy in her voice as she talks about him, but there's also anger and frustration. She knows there's good in him, but she also knows that the last time she trusted that the good in him would overwhelm the bad, it cost her dearly. Zuko's betrayal of her in Ba Sing Se is the death of their romantic feelings toward each other. I've always been much more open to Zutara arguments grounded in what it would be thematically and in terms of character development than those grounded in supposed clues in the show, but I won't deny that there is real romantic tenderness when they connect in prison. I don't need to do a search of fanfiction.net or archive of our own to know there are many fanfiction stories built off the idea of what would have happened in that cave had they been left alone. However, by the end of the series, the bond between them is stronger than it is at the end of Season 2. Platonic bonds can be stronger than romantic ones, and by the end of Season 3, there are hardly any bonds in the show stronger than the bond between these two. The show indicates this by having Zuko choose Katara to go with him to fight Azula. But how does that bond go from being shattered into a million tiny little pieces to being reforged stronger than ever? Through hard work on both their parts. It's that simple. By which I mean it's not simple at all. It's straightforward, but it is a long and a desperate road back. This is first indicated at the end of episode 312. Zuko is presented with the formidable challenge of having to convince all 4 members of Team Avatar to accept him, and even when he succeeds, they do not welcome him with open arms. There is this great moment in the episode when Zuko feels exultant and triumphant, but then he sees Team Avatar walk away from him, and he knows he's not really a part of it, not yet. But the best moment in the episode comes at the very end. Zuko has just recalled a memory of when he and his uncle first went to the Western Air Temple, and Iroh says that destiny works in funny ways. He knows now that his uncle was right, and he's glad to be on the right path. But Katara reminds him how tenuous and unstable that path truly is. Even though Zuko burned Toph, she has no problem with him joining Team Avatar. She has no hard feelings toward him. Aang eventually comes to believe that Zuko is being honest, and that Zuko being his firebending teacher was meant to be. Even Sokka views Zuko with more amused shock than hatred. By the end of the episode, he does not feel strongly for or against Zuko, but Katara still despises him, and she wants him to know it. She says that if he takes just one step out of line, he won't have to worry about his destiny anymore, because she will make sure his destiny ends right then and there. This is basically her saying, "I don't forgive you for what you did." It's wrapped in selfless language, but it is clear she is more concerned about what he did to her than what he could do to Aang. Throughout the next few episodes, Zuko fixes his broken relationships with Aang and Sokka, but fixing his relationship with Katara is much harder. Close to the start of episode 316, The Southern Raiders, Sokka toasts Zuko, who's not sure what to say. He has never been around a group of people like this before, a group of people who care about him on a deep and personal level. They may not have as tender and complicated a relationship with him as Iroh does, but they are certainly more a family to him than Ozai and Azula. He says modestly that he does not deserve this warm treatment, to which Katara bitterly responds that no, he doesn't. When he confronts Katara about not only that comment, but how she acts like she doesn't trust him, she responds that she was the first person to trust him, and for that she got a knife in her back. Zuko thinks back to what Katara said when they were in prison together, that when she pictures the face of the nation that killed her mother, she only pictures his face. The death of her mother is, to her, what Zuko's burning and subsequent exile was to him. I'm not saying the two events are the same, they're not even close. But all of the darkness surrounding Zuko until his redemption comes from his feelings about his burning, and all of the darkness surrounding Katara until this episode comes from her feelings about her mother. Even little things that don't seem to be related to the death of her mother can be subtly tied back to that event. Is it really so far-fetched to think that Katara is at least a little bit more hostile to Toph because Toph was willing to run away from her parents, a luxury Katara could never afford, considering that her mother is dead and her father is fighting against the Fire Nation? When Zuko encourages Katara to confront the man who killed her mother, he doesn't just say this because they're of a similar type psychologically. He is also speaking from personal experience. He didn't choose to kill his father, though he easily could have. So he bets that Katara won't choose to kill the man who killed her mother, and he is right. Once again, he proves he knows her. Aang's approach of forgive and move on may have worked for him, but it does not work for Katara. Not at all. She needs to confront the darkness inside her if she is to free herself from it. After she returns from her poignant field trip, she is struck by this mixture of emotions. She doesn't know if she made the right decision. She isn't sure if she did what she did because she was strong or because she was weak, but she does feel lighter. The anger and regret and longing that has burdened her in the past no longer affects her. Part of the reason she has so much pent-up rage is because she was so young when it happened. She was old enough to know what was happening, but she was too young to do anything about it. In her own words, she was a scared little girl. Now she's not. She's a powerful waterbender. She proves to herself that yes, she could kill her mother's murderer, but she chooses not to. Zuko's face is no longer the face she pictures when she thinks of the Fire Nation ghoul who killed her mother. Because of this, and because she's grateful to Zuko for finally giving her the opportunity to deal with these feelings, she forgives him. Unlike Aang, Zuko doesn't act all condescending and moralistic. He doesn't shame her for having these impulses. He just helps her work through them. Zuko and Katara have seen every part of each other. They understand each other on a real and fundamental level. There are no two characters in the whole of Avatar: The Last Airbender who understand each other quite this well, with the possible exception of Toph and Sokka. That Zuko brings someone with him to fight Azula contrasts him with Azula. For at the beginning of the show, he had nothing. He was isolated, he was lonely, he was miserable. Everyone had turned their back on him. While Azula was beloved at the start of the show, she was the crown princess. Everyone respected her, everyone admired her. Even if some of that admiration, okay, most of that admiration was based on fear. Now, he has someone with him, and she's alone. She's become a terrified person, suffering through a mental breakdown. However, that he brings not just anyone, but Katara with him, represents how he's been able to repair even the most badly broken relationships in his life. They trust each other with their lives, and fittingly, they save each other's lives. When Azula shoots lightning at Katara, Zuko jumps in the way of it. Katara, shocked and saddened, puts herself in harm's way, fighting Azula even though she has her firebending supercharged by the appearance of Sozin's comet. When Zuko and Katara look at each other after she stopped Azula and saved Zuko, the looks on their face say that there is no one else they would rather see at that very moment. They have come a very long way from Zuko stealing Katara's necklace. So thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more content like this. Any amount of money will be a great help. Also, keep watching Avatar. It's a fantastic show. And tune in for the next Avatar analysis. I swear it's coming soon. You won't have to wait long. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.